Mr. Beacon podcast is sponsored by Iot.
Welcome to the Mr. Beacon podcast. Wonderful to have you back. Hope everyone's doing well. We are continuing our journey through the land of the Internet of Things, checking in with some old friends at Contact.io. I'm really pleased to have Rom Eizenberg, who's the Chief Revenue Officer for Contact.io, on the show today. Rom, welcome to the show.
Hi, good to be here.
So Contact.io are no stranger to the Mr. Beacon podcast. Your original CEO, I was just checking, was on the show, one of our first guests back in July of 2016. It's kind of dating us a little bit. And then Philip, your current CEO, I had a really fun conversation with him back at RFID Journal Live in 2017. We were experimenting with a 360-degree camera at the time. So it was, for the people that watch it on YouTube, that was a bit strange, but it was a really good conversation. It's been a long time since we've spoken. Contact.io are massive in terms of your presence in this indoor positioning and RTLS ecosystem, one of the first pioneers. And so what I want to do in this conversation is check in on what's been happening since 2017. What are the offerings? And I'm really interested in your perspective on IoT in general, business models, value, trends, all of that sort of thing. But let's just ground people on the basics of, for someone that doesn't know Contact.io, who is Contact.io?
So Contact.io is coming from the device side of the business, and we used to be one of the top 3 beacon manufacturers in the world, which means that we were instrumental in the early days of IoT in creating building infrastructure that transmits, that enables or supports mobile phones mostly, among other devices, to localize themselves inside of buildings. So you will see Contact.io beacons if you fly out of JFK in New York, and if you land in SFO in San Francisco, you will also see our beacons on the other side. Over 50 airports, over 1,000 application partners, more than 20,000 end users have been deploying our product around the world, and mostly in North America and Europe as things are. Over the last 2 years, a lot have changed. We have been growing very, very fast. Just last year, we more than doubled our employee count. We are moving from just providing components to providing more of the solution, still without the application layer, so still in the enablement layer, but we are working together with some now very large partners like Cisco, like IBM, to drive the first enterprise IoT standards and to move this industry from point solutions to point problems type of an approach that was pretty widespread over the first kind of decade of IoT to truly scalable enterprise infrastructures that lends themselves to many use cases that are vendor agnostic, that really remove barriers to adoption that we have been seeing over the last 10 or 15 years. And we see a host of companies, right? We are not alone in that, and that's great, that's fun, right? There are a lot of barriers, there are a lot of glass ceilings that have been smashed over the past 12 to 24 months, even, I would say, that are now enabling growth and adoption in IoT markets like never before. And this is coming from a 15-year IoT veteran. I've been around in my sins, so it's a very exciting time, both for Contact.io, I think, and for the industry as a whole.
So can I still buy just the hardware? I've got some of your iconic beacons back in the cupboard there, the kind of Aztec pyramid tapered edges. If I want those, you sell a few different form factors now. You were one of the first with the hubs, I remember. Can I still just buy the hardware?
So yes, sure you can. The good news is that if you buy this hardware, it will connect to the wireless infrastructure where it's BLE enabled, so the access point element in BLE, for right now covering half of the public spaces on the planet. So you're getting a product that talks to phones and does the job that it did before, but it can be managed by cloud. It can be connected and monitored and provisioned using, in many cases, the infrastructure you already have.
So what does that mean? The infrastructure I already have is the Wi-Fi network?
That's right.
So it's aware of the Wi-Fi networks of specific venues? Or I don't quite understand.
So access points today, and for the actually many people just don't know, but they have been buying BLE or Bluetooth Low Energy enabled access points now for quite a few years. I think in the case of Meraki, for example, 6 years of access points all came out with a Bluetooth radio, which means that the infrastructure you bought and installed so your laptops and phones can use Wi-Fi to connect to the internet, and that very same infrastructure is already capable in connecting thousands and tens of thousands of devices, of sensors within your buildings. And in many cases, it just requires you to subscribe and activate these capabilities. In others, there's some dongle or some extension that you need to add if your access point is very old. But that layer of infrastructure, if we can simplify its delivery or use something you already have, then we are making the end user's capacity to adopt, the pains, the time, the cost of becoming an IoT player significantly less. This is kind of great news for all of us.
And I see there's kind of two foundational use cases. There's indoor positioning, and then there's RTLS. There's kind of where am I and how do I get to where I want to go on one hand, and then there's where's all my stuff, where are all my wheelchairs in the airport or IV pumps in the hospital. That's the RTLS side. In the case of indoor positioning, why would I want my beacons to be talking to those Wi-Fi access points? It's kind of a management thing to monitor the state, update the firmware, that sort of thing. That's the benefit.
When a cell tower gets hit by lightning, AT&T needs to know, or Verizon, right? They need to know, because otherwise the quality of service in an entire block of country is dropped and people will lose their calls. It's the same inside of a building. This infrastructure is moving from nice to have to a must have, to something that people come to count on. And when that happens, then of course you need to manage, you need to configure these devices, you need to know if they're down. You sometimes want to enhance capabilities. Also, many of these devices that were used initially just to beacon or to help for navigate can now do more things. For example, monitor the air quality, the temperature, air pressure. We can tell you if you have a ventilation problem in the office. We can monitor carbon monoxide and light, contributing to building carbon footprint management. All of this becomes a mosaic of building signals that you want to collect and aggregate and then monetize or make available. I think bringing it all together is the network, but what happens in the edge is a lot more busy and rich and rich of features than it was ever before.
Okay. That makes sense. So I want to give people a picture of the different hardware products that you have, and then we'll work up the stack and talk a bit about the solutions business and how that fits in with other partners, where the boundaries are, that sort of thing. So you still have the indoor positioning beacons, but it's not just a matter of having a beacon that helps you with wayfinding. It's also environmental sensing, potentially, that can be achieved in these spaces. Maybe we'll move to I guess you have the ID tags, right? There's sort of the putting tags on people. Is that right? Maybe I should hand over to you. Give us the summary of all of the hardware things, and then maybe we'll end up with Portal Beam, and because that's kind of a big new thing. I'd like to spend a bit of time on that.
So you can imagine the IoT solution stack like a sandwich. 3 layers. On the bottom, you have IoT devices. And we try to provide a broad variety of those simply to make the lives of our end users simple. So you can get form factors for very small pieces of equipment like an infusion pump in a hospital or a laptop. You can have rugged tags that you can track, construction equipment or oil and gas type of large, bulky industrial type of equipment. We have devices that have buttons, that have motion sensors. We have devices that monitor temperature in pharma refrigerators, for example. So a broad spectrum of IoT devices. One thing that unites them all is that they run over Bluetooth 5. They implement our kind of enterprise standard security. We can carry payload over the air, so not as limiting as iBeacon is, but still vendor agnostic and driven from standard. So variety here is the name of the game, and I'm saying that with a grain of salt because we tell our customers, hey, if you don't find what we have here, we have a great product from Iot, there are great products from other vendors, and some of them are our competitors. The point is to best solve the problem, not for us to sell another piece of hardware. So we try to service that variety for our customers. Some of our products, we are augmenting the radio, so the BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy wireless technology, with non-radio technology to enhance location, in our case infrared. And the advantage of infrared is it's light, so it doesn't penetrate through walls. And as such, we can deliver room level certainty, which is required in some use cases, mostly when you track people inside of buildings.
So what does this infrared product look like? Can you drill into that a bit more? So you have infrared tags?
So the way this basically works is that the tag itself has an IR sensor, similar to the sensor you have in your maybe television. Yeah, it's a simple IR sensor. It turns on when it sees a strong IR light, and it receives an ID, and then it puts it on the RF package and sends it to the cloud. So it will basically say, hey, I am Steve's tag, and I just saw an infrared ID 101. And the cloud knows that if you saw it, then you must be in room 101. And that, just to help the viewers understand the logic, we know where you are because we are triangulating your employee badge's signal. Just when we do that, we will tell you that in which room you are within, let's say, 90% of the time. We will make some errors. We might put you in the next door room. And most of the time, and when you are tracking assets, that's fine. 90% of the time in the right room, it's pretty accurate. Let's say it's better than 6 feet on average. That's pretty good. But there are use cases where it's not good enough. If a nurse walked into your room and then the nurse walked out and walked into my room, we need to see that she sanitized her hands in between. And for that, we need to be super accurate. We can't make little silly mistakes. That we can when you're tracking asset in some lab or a warehouse situation. So infrared helps in those scenarios, and we are using it to augment, to add on top of the radio location, of the indoor location, to drive accuracy in some use cases. So we do things like that.
And that can be, it's challenging to do that with radio waves because the wall can be very thin. It could be a temporary wall in a conference room. It could be a plasterboard wall separating two hospital rooms. And so the IR doesn't penetrate and the radio waves do. And you use the IR when you don't want it to penetrate, and you can use the radio waves when you do. That makes sense. I had one very specific question about how do you put a reader in a fridge? That just really caught my imagination. So you can have you sell a reader that will go in fridges that can read what?
Monitor the temperature, right? The concern here is a little bit the fridge itself, and you can eliminate a lot of false positive support calls where the temperature is dropping, and it's because maybe the fridge is open. You can see based on the temperature fluctuations whether you are short on, in freon gas in your compressor. But the key driver is, of course, to protect the contents of the fridge. So if what you have in the fridge are Coca-Cola cans, it's probably not a big deal. If what you have is atropine drugs, a single refrigerator's contents can be worth $1 million. So, and of course, the availability of the drug to administer care. So some fridges more valuable than others. That's just a popular use case. We monitor a variety of different, machine, equipment, parameters. Some of them we do with our own sensors. I think that what gets me really excited is now seeing a lot of traditional industrial vendors that make refrigerators, that make, we mentioned infusion pumps, right? The fact that the vendor that makes the infusion pump, they are starting to include Bluetooth radios on their devices. They are starting to allow the devices to connect without having to tag them, to add a device. So if you want, one of my favorite ways to explain what we do is we create mobile phones for things. We take a box and we give it a communication device so it can tell us where it is or if it's moving or what's the temperature inside and so on. And we're seeing more and more devices coming to market that already have these capabilities embedded. And that's great, right? It drives the growth and adoption. So we love it.
And last question on fridges. So are you battery powering those? How do you get the power to your fridge monitoring device?
Yeah, but battery-powered Bluetooth Low Energy, as its name suggests, is uber efficient. And typically, if a Wi-Fi tag will give you about 2 years of battery life, measuring temperature every 5 minutes, then your typical BLE tag will measure the temperature every 5 seconds, and will give you 6, 7, even 8 years of battery life. So from a total cost of ownership standpoint, that makes customers' life a lot easier because it increases the longevity, reduces the cost of service and failures and complexities. That's all good. And it's part of technology maturing, right? I was starting to say, I've been playing in this market for 10, 15 years. So yes, we see technology mature and it can do things that it could never do before, which is great, right? It helps.
Okay, very good. And what is Portal Beam?
So Portal Beam, in many senses, is the result of the frustration of this sales guy with the complexity and the reality of capturing building signals. And I think we started talking about Portal Beam. We were sitting in a WeWork rented conference room. So we rented this room to brainstorm because we were all traveling. And we're sitting in the room and like good IoT people, the first thing an IoT guy does when he walks into the room, we look up at the ceiling. We scan the ceiling. So what's installed here? And it took us 3 minutes to see 6 boxes. We closed the door, we climbed on a chair, we started to rip them open. I'm sorry, WeWork. We didn't damage anything. And one was an occupancy infrared sensor with LoRaWAN, 900 megahertz backhaul. The second one was a temperature sensor with Zigbee, 2.4 gigahertz backhaul. The third one was another motion sensor. Obviously, someone swapped vendors in the middle. This one was Wi-Fi. And you look at this, and there are all of these devices on the wall, and one is light, and one is occupancy, and one is temperature, and the other one, and there must be a better way. Now the thing is, what's hiding behind the story is that all of these different sensors, not just that they create wireless interference and they create these collisions because of frequencies and non-managed mess in the ether, but they're also reporting their data into silos. The JCI controller on the wall that controls the temperature in this room knows what is the temperature, just nobody else does. Just the AC unit, the HVAC. But if you want to extract knowledge from heat mapping of this building, so we can say something about carbon footprinting, about how it fluctuates during the hours of the day, if you want to map it to how many people are in the room, and if you understand that we just can't tag everybody with a Bluetooth tag, with some of our employees, yes, visitors maybe, but it just can't be everything, then there must be a better way, right? That's the starting point. There must be a better way. And when we set to the drawing board, we realized that we can pack 9 different IoT sensors, almost everything you might want to know about the inside of your building, that we can combine different technologies into a single box, and that box can run on batteries. So you don't need to run power, which is funny because, you know, if you are an IoT guy, then you know that running the power for the gateways that connect the network costs more money than the entire project, including the hardware, the software, the services, everything else costs less money than just running the power. So if we have network that is, let's say, Cisco or right access point driven, also other vendors have some solutions, not as sophisticated, but almost all Wi-Fi guys have a network. If the network is in place, and if I can walk into a room and attach a small device on the ceiling, and it's a self-installed center of the room, you don't need to be an RF engineer. And if this device runs on batteries and gives me 5 years of battery life, and if it can tell me how many people are in the room, and what is the temperature, and the humidity, and the air pressure, and the air quality, and is there light or dark, and there's the carbon monoxide gases, almost everything you can imagine. If this device can also beacon, because right, Contact IO, we got to help those phones. It can beacon and help devices like mobile phones indoor navigate. And we can add an infrared beacon, so we can create room level certainty. And we can marry all of these fantastical, everything that you would ever know, that fantasy list of smart building IoT features into a small box that is about $200 in mass market price, that runs for 5 years of batteries, so you don't need to futz around with powering up or servicing the batteries. Then and if this box can be cloud managed, and if there is some machine that can pull this data and mine this data and analyze and learn this data, maybe using machine learning or AI tools, and what we are really buying is not the sensor or the box that you put on the wall. You are buying the API, you are buying the stream that quantifies your building. And if we can do all of those things and stop selling hardware and selling APIs and making it all really simple and affordable, then maybe we can make a positive change in the industry. So that's, yes, that's what we are excited about these days.
So, sounds like the $200 for the box, which I was expecting something much bigger after your long explanation of all the things that were in it, is very comprehensive. I was expecting it to be more. It sounds like that's more of a loss leader, and or at least it's the foundation for your revenue model, not the be all and end all. What are the services that you sell on top of that? I'm assuming those are the things that are the real strategic value from your perspective and maybe from the customer's perspective as well.
I mean, first I remind customers that we're not losing money on these devices. So when the customers worry and want to pay me more because they're concerned, don't worry. We have excellent profit margins. Maybe it's a hint that if you're paying a lot more to other devices, they're unfairly priced. But my CFO is not complaining. But yes, we're selling basically building streams, and we are doing that. Think Twitter. right? Instead of us giving you a fire hose type of API, which is the traditional IoT approach, where we just bombard you with millions of events. Every second we calculate the location of everything and we let you know. Every second we sample the temperature of everything and we let you know. Instead of doing that, and having realized that a lot of our customers' legacy systems are just not capable in consuming all of this raw data, we may make it available, of course, but typically we provide a waterfall. So you can subscribe to a Twitter feed or a Slack feed or a webhooks, right, application, kind of an HTTP connection, but you can subscribe to a channel and we will push events into those channels that interests you. By you, I mean the application. So whether you are visitor management or you are a facility space planning or you are a security evacuation command center, you can subscribe on different channels that quantify different elements of the building. For example, you can ask us, I want to know the walking time between an office in the 22nd floor and the lobby. If I want to go out for lunch, how much time do I have to wait for the elevator? We can give you Waze-like capabilities inside of a building because we know how people move, right? Because we are using infrared cameras, heat-seeking cameras to basically count people as they come in and out of offices, if they come in and out of floors. But so you can ask me, what is the occupancy of the third floor? But you can also ask me elevator riding time from the 23rd floor to the lobby. I can tell you that in my wife's university, she's a professor in New York, in Parsons. It takes her 25 minutes to get to class when she walks in the lobby at 9. But we discovered that if she walks in at 8:30, it only takes 7 minutes. Why? Because the entire building, right? All the students show up at 9 for a 9-10, class beginning. Is it interesting for you? We hope. I am adamant, and I'm stuck in that motion that guys in Google, in Apple, putting a GPS on the phone, were never thinking about Uber. And one of the things that we are now the most excited about is not our own solutions, is actually the enormous ecosystem of partners, of application developers that are taking this data and building all kinds of cool experiences that we never imagined, right? But are making a positive impact for users.
So so it seems like there's lots of different services that you sell. Is this a subscription? If I want to buy that Waze service, how much does that cost?
So our baseline pricing says that there is a price per room, or almost right, a price per square foot, if we are covering the entire building, and it's a fixed price, and you can consume any and all of the APIs that we provide, and then you can cut those down to single data channels, and you say, I only care about this, and then there's some price aggregation, and of course you pay less. So usually it's rare that that we have customers that buy only a single data pipe. There's probably 3 or 4 departments or users within the customer organization that want to consume this data into their different applications. I mentioned some examples, right? The security chief, the facility manager, and when we do that, we typically bundle a set of building APIs to give you a vanilla price point. So I'm not avoiding your question. Say, in the range of $100 per room per year gives you more or less everything.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And you talked about the applications. Sounds like you're starting to become like the app store for the physical world. What are the apps that are, the biggest apps that are driving the consumption of your services? Are there specific apps that I would recognize or should recognize?
I think, a lot of this is new, and we just launched this product 2 months ago. But, to give you some examples, IBM's Tririga, that does, facility management, is kind of, JCI. These vendors have interesting applications that are more around building management. So this is the enterprise approach. But we are working with people that do targeted, marketing notifications, safety applications, like, there is a fire. How should I evacuate the building? Should I go from the north stairs or the south stairs? It depends where the smoke is. So I would like to know. But personally, I'm mostly excited right now about more consumer flavored use cases that invade the enterprise space. So, for example, environmental monitoring, right? Maybe it's COVID, maybe it's just us increasing awareness. I can't say, but we are seeing a lot of interest in, at home I have this sensor that monitors air quality because, I get allergies when there's a lot of pollen in there. So I want to know air particles. I get to the office and I ask myself, why can't I have a smart office like I have a smart home? Why is not anybody monitoring my office environment? I want to know if I'm breathing clean air, or if my co-workers in this building where the windows never open. More awareness, I think more maturity of smart home use cases start this reverse invasion from consumer to enterprise, and employees now have new demands, right? They come to the office, they want to feel safe, and creating these new experiences is really interesting for me. So I think environmental monitoring is a new area. It was always there in the corner of your vision. Someone was monitoring temperature, but not much more. And now we can talk about a much richer data set. And I think that consumer, as I said, applications are driving new interest in enterprise. So that's kind of one corner that I'm particularly kind of excited around these days.
Very interesting. I'd love to see how those applications emerge, that cross between the enterprise and the consumer. So I'm interested in the boundaries of what you do and you don't do. So it sounds like you don't really see yourselves as an app company. That's you want to support third parties that do that. How do you dance with the giants that control the infrastructure? So Cisco have recently launched DNA Spaces, which encompasses the classic Cisco and Cisco Meraki. They're a partner of yours as well. In fact, I think we're going to have them on this show to talk a bit about what they're doing. I'm really interested to know what the boundary is between what they do and what you do.
I mean, when we were starting to talk with Cisco about partnering, and we realized that this is a very deep embedded partnership, and it will be hard for us to work with all the network vendors at the same time. So we were kind of looking at the industry realistically. Of course, Cisco is the 900-pound gorillas. They are larger than the sum of all of their competitors combined. But we were a lot more interested in their vision. Because what companies like Aruba and Mist did is they basically said IoT is one directional, we don't care about managing the network. It's a side gig for us. So we also do something like that. But nobody, Aruba, Mist, all of these guys, they're not taking care of edge device security. They're not taking care of the density of a lot of devices, and now you manage a network, which they do on Wi-Fi. And in IoT, where you have actually a lot more devices, they completely neglected that side of the business. And they were, we felt that there was this early stage opportunistic approach. Cisco was the first vendor that put their foot down and said, no, if we do it proper, and we build an entire schema of how IoT can scale. How we move from a pilot that's very exciting to everybody to, millions of devices, a lot more devices than we have on the Wi-Fi network, right? Almost 10-to-1 ratio. And connect the physical world to the internet because this is what we do. And we brought to the table expertise in the device world. Those are unique networks. They're asynchronous. These devices are not connected. So we brought a lot of that kind of expertise. We were working with a lot of these vendors in the past. And we decided that we're doing a very tight kind of go-to-market integration with Cisco, and we are very excited and about the results. You can already see that the impact of that go-to-market motion is taking over. So Cisco, I think of the last 6 months, and I don't have their numbers. Even if I wanted to share, which I shouldn't, but I don't have it. But my impression is that over the last 6 months, they've probably been able to do more than the rest of the Wi-Fi IoT industry in the 2 years before. So it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing because it replaces bargaining powers in the hands of the end users, because it pushes for mass standards. Because it creates an ecosystem in the scale that only a large player like Cisco can create.
So that device management service is traditionally something that I would expect a company like Contact.io to offer. Isn't that infringing a little bit on a potential source of revenue for your company?
I mean, it certainly is. But we are doing unfortunately, atypical thing of putting ourselves in the customer's shoes. And I'm very, very adamant, and I'm very confident in saying that when your customer, when the end user is successful, when they are adopting, when they're seeing return over their investment, when their experience is positive, when they have speed and velocity, then everybody wins, even if you bygone some of your revenue pie. So I have BLE to Wi-Fi gateways. So if you are an airport and you want to monitor and manage your indoor navigation infrastructure, you can buy those gateways from me and I make money. And you can buy this device management from me and I make money for it. Or you can use your access points and buy that capability through the Cisco DNA Spaces, like you mentioned, as an example. When you do that, I make a bit less money, but your life is so much better. My deal cycle is much faster. The path to value is faster. You will call me and add no use cases and buy maybe equipment that you wouldn't buy from me if you were still struggling getting your basic thing to work. So yes, we are giving up on some of our elements in our revenue pie. We are doing that because we think it accelerates adoption. It increases the total size of the pie. Right? So we have less of a cake, but our cake is much bigger.
Yeah, velocity and customer satisfaction and the ability to sell other services. Seems like it's a good trade-off there. Well, I think I want to wrap up, but before we finish, I want to get your perspective more broadly on where the Internet of Things has been, where it is at the moment, and where it's going to in the future. Has the Internet of Things been successful in your view?
I mean, it's a broad term loosely used. I think the IoT deployments over cellular, over 4 and 5G, have been mostly successful because mostly those are point solutions to point problems. They're isolated. There is a single sensor somewhere remote, and that does the job very well. I think that everywhere IoT tried to invade buildings and build networks and deliver outcomes, business outcomes at scale, where all the employees are tracked, or all the assets in the warehouse are managed, and so on. All the building is connected. In that particular space, we have been through almost 20 years of a lot of hype, over-promising, under-delivering. If you track the venture dollars that went into developing IoT technologies and ended up in the graveyard, more graveyard dollars than happy anniversary party dollars. So did it fail? I mean, in a sense, it's hard to avoid that conclusion, but I am an optimist, and I want to say it's not failure as much as it is the process of technology going through life cycles and life cycles and life cycles. It's a bit like, the older guys, you might remember WAP. WAP was the beginning of wireless cellular internet. And we had this ridiculous primitive website, completely failed. So has wireless internet failed? No, we can't live without it, right? We even inside our own home, most people when they go to the bathroom, I don't want to continue, but there's only one thing you take with you to the bathroom, right? It's the internet.
Right. No, it's amazing. I totally agree. I think I wrote about it in this podcast is based on a book, Beacon Technologies, and in the book we talk about the value of this hubris, this excitement. It's about achieving escape velocity, and that's basically based on hype. And you have 1 million people storming the beaches and only a few get through, but then they basically take over. And it's a rough process, and there's a lot of people who probably are licking their wounds, but then there's others who survived and have gone to really enjoy what's the other side of that beach. The beach analogy is a new one. I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep that. It's probably in poor taste, but escape velocity, I think, is probably a better metaphor.
Escape. And I want to make maybe a small addition on top, because sometimes it's not just strategic imperatives and the right decisions. It's sometimes just a bit of luck. The winds need to be right. The stars needs to align. And, as a silly example, Bluetooth Low Energy as a technology choice for IoT would not have taken off at the velocity it did without the adoption of this type of silicon, of this type of technology in consumer products. Right? I have Nike shoes with a Bluetooth communicator. I have an 8-year-old boy, his name is Dylan, and he loves Lego. And he has a Lego toy that has Bluetooth in it. And he connects it to the iPad, and he can, operate a motor and cause the robot to turn around. But this is Lego. This is not IoT, enterprise, building security solutions. This is Lego. But the proliferation of Bluetooth, the scale of the Bluetooth chip deployment in almost everything now, creates investment in silicon by the chip manufacturers, and it benefits the supply chain all the way to the universe of IoT, of course. So sometimes a bit of luck, the right winds, stars need to align, and then great things happen.
And where are we headed to in the next few years? What do you think the secret of success is? What are the things that you're going to be looking out for in your space and maybe in the adjacent spaces?
I think that the key motion that I see in terms of its impact on end users, on the market as a whole, is the embedding of what is an overlay network or an overlay tagging kind of strategy today into the fabric of the things that we already have. So we mentioned it in different perspectives. The building layout, the fabric of the infrastructure that makes the building run before anybody walks in the door becomes IoT enabled. That means smart lighting. That means Wi-Fi networks that support IoT. The machines, the devices themselves, laptops. 6 years ago, I did a project with a large defense organ that needed to tag laptops to prevent them from being removed from the base because they have secret materials. These days, we are talking to Intel about embedding the Contact.io wireless stack in any Wi-Fi Bluetooth chip that Intel produces. That means that laptops can talk to this building infrastructure without having to be tagged. We mentioned infusion pumps. So becoming part of the fabric of reality, of the devices that you already buy, of the networks that you already have, shifts the focus of the IoT industry to processing large amounts of data, to using AI and machine learning tools to extract insight and wisdom from this ocean of data. And I think that also for Contact.io, if you're looking at our roadmap ahead, then this is where the majority of our R&D dollars and our focus is going towards.
Wonderful. It's been a great conversation. Rom Eizenberg, Contact.io, thanks very much for spending the hour with us.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening. For veterans of the show, you may have noticed that there's a bit of extra time on that timeline. This is something we've never talked about before. This is the first time, but there's an Easter egg at the end of our shows where we talk to our guests a bit about their lives. Do stay with us a little longer if you have the time. If not, thank you for joining us for this update on Contact.io, what they're doing. I want to thank Nelson Fernandez, who edits the show, Jesse Hazelrig, who produces it, and once again, thank you for spending some time with us. We'll see you again. Bye-bye. So, Rom, where are you at the moment?
Well, normally I live in the West Village in New York, and over the last year, since COVID started, we are tucked away in the Catskill Mountains. That's upstate New York.
So you have you're renting a place, or you have a holiday place, or?
Yeah, we have a little weekend house up on the mountain, and COVID, and I'm embarrassed to say that it's been horrible. But for my particular family, not so bad. I caught up with a lot of yard work. I was building a deck. So sometimes reality forces you to disconnect from life, and you make the best out of it.
I've done the same thing. I've invested in a lot of power tools, and I've been making things out of wood. It's incredibly therapeutic. I love it. And I feel a little guilty saying it, I have to say. Where did you grow up?
So my parents come from Europe, but I grew up in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And I think my last company, we were raising venture capital from a US fund, and one of the conditions was that we move our management team. So that was 11 years ago. And I fell in love. We're having a great time, so we stayed.
Fantastic. And I was just looking at your LinkedIn profile before recording the show, and it looked like you did one of your degrees in Milan. Is that correct?
Yes, in Bocconi. It was such a great adventure. We just sold the company, and my initial education was in computer science, and I felt like studying something different. And my wife felt like traveling Europe a little bit, and we had a little bit of cash. We were relatively young. Yes, we moved to Italy. I went to Bocconi. We drove around Europe and made new friends. The sort of thing that you get to do when you're young.
That sounds amazing. So you were learning. So did you know Italian before? Did you know Italian afterwards? I'm assuming you did.
No, not a word before. After, my wife does better than me because she's the smart one. But I get by. It was a great experience.
Amazing. Okay, so we have this tradition. We ask people about their musical tastes and preferences, and the construct is you're on a trip to Mars. What are the three songs that you would choose to take to Mars, and why?
Well, I think that we're going to have to start with Living on a Jet Plane, and there is a little Armageddon movie reference here. That's for the takeoff. Then, of course, you need David Bowie's Space Oddity.
Of course, it's a classic.
And I was thinking when we land, that's a critical moment. We need a soundtrack for landing, so I would go with We Are the Champions by Queen. Very
motivational. Do you listen to it? Do you listen to it on a regular basis, or it's just when you're landing on Mars? Is it a favorite?
I mean, I grew up in the later 80s as a kid, but I think I was completely pegged to 70s and 60s music. So yes, a lot of David Bowie and Queen and this sort of thing.
Yeah, wonderful. No, it's just a very motivational song. I don't do it very often, but sometimes, like if I'm nervous about a big meeting, then I'll play that song. It's really good.
Perfect. That's right.
Very good. Well, thanks very much. Great to chat with you.